Smile.
But I'm not happy.
People are staring.
I don't want to do this.
You have to. They'll know
No one
something's
cares
wrong.
about your
Why
life.
is that bad?
Nobody cares. They won't understand.
Nobody
I want to
cares.
go home.
You'll hurt their feelings.
This was
What's wrong with
ridiculous.
you?
What are we
Why
even
just
talking
talking
about?
like
Just
you
want
want
to keep them happy.
What if they
They're
think
gonna
you're
be
stupid?
mean.
Just
Just
keep
keep
them
them
happy.
happy.
Just
Keep them happy. Just lie.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, here me and you, let's keep it real honest.
Hi, my name is Samantha, and this is Real Honest. It's my podcast where I share candid thoughts and feelings about life, love, and relationships, God and church, adulting, the workplace, and everything in between. It's time for my mid-month goals check-in to see how I'm tracking on things, and I honestly had to pause and look at my planner to see what I even set out to do this month, so yikes. Well, let's see what I wrote down at the end of July. Okay, I picked 3 goals for August, and they were diet and exercise, write something, anything at all, and get started with the Amazon influencer program. So, actually, I'm doing pretty good. I was out of town for half of July, and then I had a house guest for a week in July, so just because of all of that, there was a lot of eating out and very little exercising of just not having like my home gym and my regular time and space to do what I wanted to do. So just being back alone in my house has been awesome. I'm back to making HelloFresh every week. I'm back to on my Peloton routine. So that's been awesome. I have been writing. I haven't written a ton, but my goal was to write anything at all this month to be an improvement from not writing at all last month. So I have accomplished that. I wrote a short story that I just submitted a few nights ago to a writing contest. This is the first contest I've ever entered, and shout out to my friend who begged me to do it because I honestly completely forgot that writing contests even existed. And I've never submitted before because I forgot they were a thing. And way back in the day, probably 10 years ago now, when I found out that they were a thing, I didn't have material that I was proud of to submit. But now that they're back in my orbit and I've made a whole list with ChatGPT, now I have deadlines of things, and it also gives me an opportunity to do other creative projects that aren't my book. Short stories are a whole lot easier and still keep the creative juices flowing and different kind of ideas and stuff. So if I sit down to write my book and I get stuck, I can just flip over to one of these other things. And since the contests all have submission deadlines, that gives me a deadline to work towards, so that helps me stay motivated. So that's awesome. And I can potentially win some money, which is also cool. And then the Amazon influencer program, for those who don't know, it allows you to create review videos for products that gets posted to Amazon's site. And then you can set up a personal storefront and drive links to there. Also, Amazon will put your videos on the product pages for the products that you review. And if people watch your video and then buy the product or a similar product, then you will earn a commission. And I've just seen a lot of people doing this as an easy side hustle because it doesn't take a whole lot of time to record a review video. Getting set up was pretty easy. I have about 20 videos up. All 20 of my videos have only been up for 2 days, so I'll report back probably in a month or so if it's making any money. I have watched a ton of videos of people that do this as a genuine side hustle, and people are making anywhere from $10 to thousands of dollars a month. There's a lot of skill and strategy that goes into what products to review and how long to make your video and all that kind of stuff. And based on how much money you earn in commissions is probably going to dictate how much time you want to put into it. So I'm kind of in the experimentation phase, but either way, what I have learned from my research is that you really need to have hundreds of videos to be consistently making hundreds or thousands of dollars a month with this side hustle. And so I'm only up to 20 videos so far. I'm not expecting a whole lot from it. But I figure this was a good option for me because half the things in my house are from Amazon. I'm so sorry if you hate big tech and demand that everybody shop small. Just personally, I do shop small, but I also shop on Amazon because I love to get things delivered next day and to just have everything that I need in the same place and not have to hunt for it. But just because of that, it's super easy for me because I have a lot of stuff in my house that I can review, and I don't have to deal with requesting samples and then getting samples for products that I don't want, because then it's what do you do with them? Just have this pile of crap I don't want in my house. But I will report back later and let you guys know if it's a viable side hustle for me. I feel like what I'm learning from God right now is to rest more and to rest better. I was doing a whole, like, I did a whole Bible study specifically on rest and Sabbath and like how to really intentionally take that like 24-hour pause every single week. And I find it interesting because there are all of these debates in the Christian community about like what constitutes rest. You know, some people will say like, well, you can't cook on the Sabbath because cooking is work and things like that. Where personally, I think that we all defined rest differently. I think there are people who identify cooking as work and there are people who don't consider it work. And so if you consider it work, then don't cook on your Sabbath. If you don't consider it work, feel free to cook on your Sabbath. I don't care what you do. This is all about whatever works for you personally. But I think that I have been so focused on my rest day that I haven't been resting enough during the week. And my therapist was pointing out like, okay, that's great that you have a day, but like you need to rest every day. And essentially what you're doing is just trying to pack all of your other days from the second you wake up to the second you go to sleep. And that's why you're so tired all the time and not getting everything done and always being mad at yourself, because you actually need time every single day to rest. So I am working really, really hard on shortening my to-do lists and being more realistic. And essentially, like, I'm trying to assume that anything that I have to do is going to take twice as long to do, so that I put half as many things on my to-do list. And if I happen to do it in less time than I allocated for it, then I either have extra time to rest or I have extra time that day to do something else. But essentially, I'm not planning to overextend myself as I was in the past. It's still really hard. I'm very bad at resting. I tend to get angry if I spend a whole day not doing anything. And this is what was interesting about the Bible study, was it talked about how resting isn't necessarily doing nothing, and rest is not the same as recreation. So like the purpose of rest is not just fun. It can incorporate fun, but mostly it's activities that rejuvenate you to enable you to work again. So it like some type of like planning and preparation on a Sunday evening and like organizing your to-do list for the week and prioritizing like what you're going to do start of the week, end of the week, middle of the week, that kind of thing. Like some people would consider that to be work and they're like, I don't want to do that until I actually get to work on Monday. For me, it's a resting activity because it helps me prepare for the week ahead, and it helps me go to sleep Sunday night, like, I guess more calm, to where I'm not waking up on Monday freaking out and not knowing what to do. But I sit down every Sunday night and I just kind of review like what's coming up this week in my personal life, social life, at work. Like what do I need to, how can I organize things? And so that way I have a plan, and I know like if it's a particularly busy week or if I'm not home a whole lot, I'm probably not going to get all of my workouts in. And I want to know that before I go into the week, so that I'm not coming out of the week looking back at my time being like, why didn't I work out, and like hating myself and being angry. But on the front end, I was able to say, I wasn't going to have time for it, and I already knew that, and that's okay. But I think when I talk about resting and looking at like how I prioritize things, I ultimately am looking at things that are getting me closer to the person that I want to be. So I'm trying to build, I want to be a less anxious person. I want to be more kind. I want to be more compassionate. And I'm just always looking at like, what are my habits and activities that are getting me closer to that? And how can I get more of those and do more of them? And then what are the habits and activities that are pulling me away, and how can I cut those out or cut them down? So I want to talk about spiritual formation today. And before those of you that like don't believe in Jesus or have a completely different religion or whatever, like totally run away. I promise I'm going to make this applicable. This is not specifically a Christian thing. I am currently taking my small group through a study that's called Practicing the Way. You can find it at practicingtheway.org or Google it if you're interested in getting more information. But essentially, the study itself is about becoming more like Jesus. However, it addresses the whole idea that all of us are becoming something. Like we are all following something or someone in the world. And we all have these, like, whatever our habits, our relationships, our environment, like it's turning us into some kind of person. And what I have really enjoyed about it is just reflecting on who I'm actually becoming as a person and evaluating, am I becoming the person that I want to become? And if not, what can I do to get there? Because there are actual steps that we can take. So I'm going to walk you guys through some of the reflection questions that are in the study. But again, can be applicable to really no matter what you believe. This is applicable just to you as a human. So the first question is, what habits do you keep in your daily and weekly life, and how might they be shaping you? For me, these are things that I look into, like, okay, what do I do every single day? I get up, I make my bed, I wash my face, I work, record some videos, I do some editing, I talk to friends. And then, how might those things be shaping me? Like good skin is important to me. I have a really serious skincare routine. So I do that. I try to read the Bible every day. I try to meditate and do some gratitude every day in terms of how those shape me. I do the days that I successfully do my gratitude journal or a meditation and or read the Bible and actually like reflect and learn something from what I'm reading and not just rush through it like a checklist situation. On the days that I accomplish those, I do feel a lot more at peace, a lot calmer, a lot more prepared for the day. I notice myself getting less upset with people throughout work if I set up my morning well. Like drink water, have a good breakfast, those kinds of things too. And then, when it comes to work, I think about like, do I love the day-to-day tasks of my job? Not always, but I really like my coworkers, and that makes a huge, huge difference for me in my mood and things that I like, so just think about what those daily habits are and the way that they shape you. Like if you're checking your phone and scrolling through social media first thing that you wake up every single day, how is that making you feel? Is that energizing you, or is it making you sad? If you're starting your day comparing yourself to other people and feeling like you're not good enough, what can you use something other than your phone as your alarm? Put your phone in a different room if you need to. The next question is, who are the most important people in your life, and what do those relationships look like? I think before you can answer this, you probably need to identify how you're going to define important. So for me, when I hear important, I would immediately either think my mom, because I would not exist without her, or I would think like Taylor Swift, because she shows up in like every conversation that I have, and her music has shaped like all of the like big important moments in my life. Like any sad moment, any happy moment, I have celebrated with her, or I have like been depressed and she's gotten me through that. But obviously Taylor Swift doesn't know me, and my mom is less a part of my day-to-day decisions at this stage in my life. So when I'm answering this question of who are the most important people in my life, personally, I'm identifying that as who are the most impactful, like who are the people that I am talking to day to day to process through things, to make decisions, who are the people that I feel like I am becoming more like because of the amount of time that I spend with them. And so my answer to that question would be a lot of my coworkers, because I think a lot of people spend more time at work than we do at home. And also like my very close friends, like the ones that I either am texting all day long, or I'm on the phone with multiple times a week, or that I am voice noting back and forth with throughout the week. So once I've identified those people, and now I'm thinking through the second half of the question, which is what do those relationships look like? I'm trying to think of like, when these people's names pop up on my phone, like, am I excited? Am I distressed? Am I annoyed? How am I feeling when I am on the phone, or when I'm listening to a voice note or reading a message? Am I learning something? Am I growing? Are these people cheerleaders, or are they pushing me? Like, are they helping me learn? And I do have a lot of friends that ask, like, that will say like, hey, do you just want me to support you in this moment? Or do you want actual real thoughts? Which I love that question. I love when somebody has the emotional intelligence to ask that. If you don't know the person well enough to just intuitively know how they want you to answer, I think always ask. That's fantastic. I have a lot of friends who are in therapy, as am I, which I think is amazing because there's just a language that people learn to identify their feelings and also to learn how to ask good questions to get to know other people better that we learn in therapy that I find really, really helpful. So I feel like my relationships look really healthy for the most part at this stage in my life, which makes me really happy. I think that most of my friends push me. I think most of them do help me to grow, and they do teach me something new whenever I spend time with them. It's always like an exciting experience, and those are things that I like to feel. I definitely look back on seasons of my life, particularly ones where I was severely depressed, where my relationships were completely unhealthy across the board. And anyone that was in my life on a day-to-day basis, I either was feeling very stressed and anxious when their name would pop up on my phone, or I was feeling like a level of elation when their name would pop up because I was codependent on them. And it was like a staring at my phone, like need. And so I do love that I'm finally at a place where I don't feel like I need any of my friends. I feel like I want them and I'm grateful to have them. But if they move on or if I need to move on for whatever reason, I know that we're all going to be okay. And I'm very grateful actually to have had the toxic, unhealthy relationships because now I know the red flags to look for and the things to stay away from. And then the third question is the heavy hitter. And this one is, what stories have shaped the way you view the world and where did they originate? This can be something like whether you consider yourself an optimist, a pessimist, or a realist. Where did you get that outlook from? When you think about the future, both the future of the world and your own personal future, are you excited about it? Or does it make you sad? And kind of where does that come from? You know, if you are about to be a parent and you're telling yourself, I'm going to be terrible at this, I shouldn't do this. Why is that what you believe? You know, where is that coming from? I think a lot of negative experiences have impacted the way that I view the world. For example, I do have a fundamental belief that most straight men are bad people. And I know that that's not a true fact. But I just have had so many really bad experiences with straight men that I tend to go into interactions and experiences and relationships with them expecting to be harmed. And I'm very, very aware of that because that affects the way that I carry myself in the world, like whether I'm out in the world physically or like I've got a remote job. So if I'm in a meeting and I'm the only woman in the meeting or one of few women in the meeting, I'm expecting to be shut down and to not be heard. And this comes from being a woman. It comes from being a Black woman. But the fact that I know that at least helps me pause for a minute and say, hey, this is those past experiences. That's not the whole world. That's not the environment that I'm in right now. And it's not guaranteed to happen everywhere that I go all the time. So let's kind of pause and pull back and reset. I've discussed on here many times before that I really struggle to make and keep friends. So that has given me the fundamental belief that I am a bad friend or that people don't love me or that people can't love me. I haven't seriously attempted to date in 10 years because that never works out for me either. And that has reinforced the belief that like people either can't love me or they won't love me and I'm just never going to be chosen. And for a long time, that belief was the source of my depression because I was searching for my validation in other people. Like I needed other people to say, you're the one, like I choose you. I want you in my life, whether it was as a friend, as a girlfriend, whatever it was, like I needed someone to say like, I choose you. And after years of therapy, I have finally gotten to a point where I am like, no, I'm going to choose myself. And that's enough for me. I don't need anyone else to choose me. If nobody else on this planet likes me or thinks that I'm a good person, but I'm genuinely doing everything that I can to be as kind and put as much positivity in the world as I can, and people just refuse to receive it or don't want to receive it, that's their loss. I'm going to repeat these 3 questions in case you are not driving and you have time or like somewhere that you can write it down or if you want to pause and journal real quick. But so the questions again were, what habits do you keep in your daily and weekly life and how might they be shaping you? Question 2 was, who are the most important people in your life and what do those relationships look like? And question 3 is, what stories have shaped the way you view the world and where did they originate? This is why I titled this episode off of Taylor Swift's lyric, Were There Clues I Didn't See? Because I think that a lot of this is not intuitive, especially if you're not naturally a reflective person, if you don't journal, and if you don't go to therapy, and you don't have any avenues where you're regularly looking at things like this. I think it's easy to miss. And I remember back when I was depressed and angry and anxious, I couldn't see what it was that was causing that. Like, it's one of those hindsight is 2020 situations where now, like, I remember my like 22-year-old self and I watch her walk right into that toxic relationship. And I hate that man so much. But at the same time, like, she did the best she could with the information that she had. And I wish I could just like go back in time and give little me a hug. But I also wish I had had somebody asking me, like, why are you so sad and so angry all the time? And do you want to feel something different? And do you know that you can? I'm not sure if somebody had asked me those questions, if I would have, I don't know that I was mentally and emotionally in a place. I probably would have like very snarkily been like, of course I want to feel something different. It's just not possible. Like, this is just my life. This is how things are. So if that's where you are today, that's okay. That's where you are, and you don't need to be in a hurry to change it. If you ever get to a place where you're like, okay, I'm ready and I do want to change it, maybe come back to this and maybe think about it, because I think that we do become like the people that we spend the most time with, just naturally we pick up our friends and our family's patterns of speech and, words that they use and the type of humor that they have, that kind of stuff. Like, I think it all has to do with like who we're interacting with on a day-to-day basis, but it also has to do with the environments that we grew up in, like the house you grew up in, the town you grew up in, and your parents or lack thereof have a huge impact on who you are today. And I don't think that you necessarily need to go back to any of that to like blame anyone, but I think it's really important to identify like this thing had a profound impact on something that I believe, which impacts the way that I move in the world in a negative way. And I want to spin that. Like, I want to move in the world positively. I want to be excited about life. I want to be excited to go to work every day. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that like spending 5 minutes in the morning reading the Bible and then doing a 10-minute meditation makes my job fun. Like, I don't have a job that I consider fun. But I will say that if I spend the time on a Sunday night looking at my to-do list and planning out my Monday, and then if I get up early enough on Monday to take some time for myself and do the meditation and drink some water just to put myself in a calm headspace, I'm going to get through my workday in a better mood. And little things that people say are not going to set me off as quickly as they would if I were to just roll out of bed and run to my laptop and start working and not really take that time for myself and not rest and not pause and not try to be grateful or think about what other people might be going through that's stopping them from being able to do their jobs effectively, which is making mine even more difficult. So just some food for thought that I wanted to share. I hope that's helpful to somebody. I'm recording this at the beginning of the week, so I haven't had a hard conversation this week, but I also really want to do something that's related to the topic. So I don't really have one conversation, but it's more multiple conversations that I had when I was deciding to step down from volunteering with my church leadership. Because that decision took a few months and I consulted a lot of people. Like, I asked for opinions of people that I was leading, people who were leading others at my same level, from people who were leading me, but also people that are totally unattached to the church in any way. Like, I consulted friends that like don't go to church and don't volunteer, but know me well, just to kind of see what they thought and to evaluate how I felt about everybody's opinions. Also, because I was expecting most people that are involved in my church to be like, oh my gosh, you can't step down. What are you talking about? And I did get that a lot from many people. And I was worried that I was going to continue in the role specifically because other people told me to, or because it was going to disappoint them if I left. And that's not the reason that I wanted to stay. Like, I wanted to make sure I was staying because it was something that I really wanted to do and felt good about. So as I was doing this study that I talked about earlier, and also just talking to my therapist about it, we were kind of walking through like, why did I sign up to become a leader in the first place? And my initial reason, I'm going to be honest here because this is the point of the podcast, for me to be candid. So I legitimately signed up to lead a small group at my church because I could not find a young adult group. I think my church had them, but they all were closed or something. And I was in a bunch of, well, not a bunch, but I was in a couple different women's groups where everybody was my mom's age. And I was having a lot of issues with my mom at the time, and everybody was relating to her. And anytime I would mention things, people would try to explain her perspective, but nobody was seeing mine. So it was a combination of like wanting people my age and in a similar life stage that were going to understand me. But then more than that, it was because I wanted friends. I was like, I don't feel like I really have friends at work or where I live, and I'm looking for a network of people in my age group and my similar life stage that I can become friends with. And I don't know that anyone at my church would say that that's the best reason to lead a group. Like, most other leaders have reasons of like, God called me to do this, or I really want to serve God, I really want to grow the kingdom, or, something like beautifully Christian, which that's just not me. That's not my vibe. And, brief aside, I will say I think that calling shows up differently for different people. So I think that because that's just not how I speak, and that's not how I am, and that's not what I look for, I think God did want me to lead my small group. And I think that God knew that looking for friends was the thing that was going to get me to do it. So I think he definitely had a hand in like closing all of the groups at the time so that I couldn't find one, because he knew that would propel me to start one. But then from there, I kind of stopped evaluating over time how things were going. And I kind of just like, I got elevated into different roles and was like moving up in leadership, which I really loved. But it also was just taking more and more and more of my time. And when a volunteer position starts to require more of your time than the job that you get paid for, I think that is a time to question things. But at the same time, I think that I changed over time, and what I needed and wanted and what I was getting from leading other people changed. I think the first 3 years that I did it, I absolutely loved it. Like, I loved leading my group. I loved leading other leaders, and I loved like meeting everybody else once a year to like just see all the other leaders from different states and countries and all over the world. And I love that, and it's beautiful, which is why I still love this church. I love being a part of a global church. It's one of my favorite things in the world. But just for me as a leader, I did get the friends. I got the friends that I wanted out of my group, and things started to shift where it wasn't fun anymore. It became work. And it became tedious and mundane, and I was finding myself getting angry, and like my volunteer position became a source of frustration more than it was a source of like happiness. And a lot of people, like, everything in life is not easy. I get that. Like, you have to work, and everything's not going to be like light and happy and fun all the time. But I think that we should strive for things that are like that a higher percentage of the time. So back to the hard conversation piece, when I was trying to talk to different individuals about potentially stepping down, I just was getting so many responses of like, but who else is going to do this? Like, you've built all of these systems and you've put everything in place. And, I was just like, okay, well, if we really trust that God is in control, right? He's either going to stop me from making this decision, or he's going to raise up somebody else. Like, he's not going to let me tank the whole ship just because I don't want to do it anymore. But I also had people who like would have conversations about like, well, are you just frustrated? Like, do you just need to take a break and like take a little breather and come back? Which maybe I do. I don't know. I might take a 6-month break. I might take a 1-year break and then go back and do it again. I have no idea. But just to relate this back to kind of who you're becoming, I think that like in the first 3.5 years that I was doing it, I felt like my volunteer role was helping me become more kind and more patient and more loving. And I feel like in the last 2 years, at the end of it, it was helping me become more angry and frustrated and irritated. And I really want to back away from things that are a source of that. And I guess the difficulty for me, it's not so much that it was hard to tell anyone that I wanted to step down. It more was that it was hard to make the decision. And I felt like the more people that I consulted, the more back and forth that I would go. And typically, I've mentioned this before, but typically I only crowdsource opinions to solidify what I want on my own. And I do that based on like, if I'm like, should I go left or should I go right? And somebody tells me I should go left. Am I encouraged by that answer? And am I excited? Did they basically tell me what I wanted to hear? Or am I challenged by it in the sense that I'm like, well, no, I'm going to go right anyway. Or is it one of those things where I just have to think more? But this was interesting where people that were like, yeah, you should totally step down. I was like, well, why? And then I would double down on all the reasons of why I needed to continue in the role. And for people that were like, you absolutely cannot step down, you have to keep doing this, I would do the opposite. And I would be like, no, I'm definitely stepping down. Like I have to double down. And so it was more, I think, an exercise for me on like not crowdsourcing opinions and just really sitting with myself and asking the question, like, who are you becoming? Like going through those questions, but in this specific area of my life, like what are the daily habits and how are those shaping me? Who are the most important people that I'm interacting with in this role and how is that shaping me? What are the stories that I believe about the world in the context of this volunteer role and how is that impacting things? And when I got through the end of that process, I kind of was left with like, yeah, this is something that I need to let go, at least in this upcoming season. Okay, what I'm watching right now. You guys, I'm still going through a bunch of old stuff. Like I'm always watching The Vampire Diaries. I recently restarted The 100. I'm rewatching Smallville for like I think I've seen that all the way through 3 times now. I'm gonna probably restart Supernatural soon. I'm watching Station 19 for the first time. I'm making my way through all of Shonda's shows. And so since I finally like completed and caught up with Grey's and then I watched all of Private Practice, now I'm moving on to Station 19. Love that so far. First season is really strong, but we all felt that way about the first, 12, 13 seasons of Grey's. And now we've got some nonsense. So we'll see how that goes. I watched the first maybe 5 episodes of Countdown because I love Jensen Ackles so much and I really wanted to love it, but I just don't. I was so bored and I was really only watching it for Jensen Ackles and I found myself skipping all of the scenes that he wasn't in and I just did not care about the overall story, which to me is usually bad writing or bad editing, but I wasn't interested. So I quit that. I didn't even make it halfway through the pilot of Ballard, which I feel really bad because I love Maggie Q. But again, I was very bored, so I just went back and started rewatching Nikita instead because that show is very interesting to me. I do like Butterfly, though, on Prime Video, Daniel Day Kim's show. That's really interesting. I'm only on episode 3, so I might be back next week being like, got boring, I hate it. But that one's very interesting so far, so we'll see how that goes. What are you guys watching? Send me an email and let me know. That's all that I have for you today. Thank you for listening. Please leave a review if you feel like it, unless you hated it, and then please don't leave a review. New episodes most every Wednesday at 6 a.m. Central. If you have questions, comments, concerns, or just want to chat, send me an email at realhonestpod@gmail.com. Okay, bye.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, hear me and you, let's keep it real honest.